Hi there, I'm Rebecca and a really warm welcome back to my channel PumpkinBecki. In this week's video we are looking at winterising my carnivorous plant collection. Let's get started. In my first video about my carnivorous plants, which was back in April this year, I was getting them ready for their growing season. In this week's video we're actually looking at getting them ready for their dormant season. I grow temperate region carnivorous plants and they really need that winter cold to rest and gain strength, ready for next year so they can grow big and beautiful. My goodness, it was a hot summer this year, and I know I've mentioned that in multiple videos, sorry for repeating myself, but I think it really took a toll on my carnivorous plant collection. They weren't as vital as they have been in previous years. I want to grow them in the greenhouse. That's because I use them as a natural pest control. I could have moved them outside, but I mean, I've got a few here, so I wasn't really, it was hot enough. I didn't really feel like I wanted to keep moving things in and out of the greenhouse. I just left the doors open, made sure the vents were open, and they were just left to get on with it. The dishes were always full of water, which basically brought the water levels up to about halfway up the pot sides. As you can see, I'm growing them in deep plant trays, and that's so that I can get a really good amount of water in here. Now in the winter we don't want them to sit in water all the time, so it's a good idea to let them dry out a little bit and then top up with a little bit of rainwater. We don't use tap water, you know this, please go back and look at my last video. I explain it all absolutely beautifully. So what we need to do is just look at each of the plants, take off the top growth that has definitely died back and will no longer help the plant keep going over winter, and just give them a bit of a freshen up really. This is my Sarracenia rubra gulfensis, Yellow River, Florida. That's such a mouthful. Can we not make shorter names? I call this one Joe. I don't. This was mega. When I got it, it had huge pictures, it had flowers on it already. This was from Terrific Nurseries and was a birthday present from my best friend. Not this year, last year. This year it's put on more pictures, but they've been much smaller. But what you can see going on here is that they are now starting to dry out, and we need to take these off. They are spent pictures. Okay, so you can see that this one has a significant amount of browning on it. It is definitely ready to come off. Some people pull them off at the bottom to make it nice and clean. I am not that brave. So I just take a nice sharp pointy pair of scissors and snip as close to the bottom as I can. I'm going to cut this picture, it's quite a good one. I'm going to open this picture and you're going to see everything that this particular picture managed to catch over the summer. Can you see all that? I'm going to bring you right in. So I hope you can see all that right the way down. It's flies, it's wasps, it's insects, it's all sorts of stuff right down to where the digestive juices are sitting. This plant still has some beautiful, fresh, healthy looking pictures on it. I'm not going to take these off right now. I may come back a bit later in the season and prune them off, or I might leave them until spring. For now they are still feeding the plant. There's a really good reason that you don't take these browned pictures off straight away in the summer, for example, and that's because the plant is still using them to feed from. So you might see a burn hole and think, ooh, that looks really ugly. As a plant, I'm going to prune that off like you might do with other plants in the garden. But as you saw, stacked up in that picture was a nutrient source. So if you go and prune all those off, you're removing the food for the plant and you will weaken it. Now at the bottom of this particular leaf is a really good example of why we must do this cleaning up process. I've actually got a little bit of grey mould or botrytis beginning to form just here, just above my scissors. We don't want that. That will again weaken the plant. We want to get rid of that. So I am going to actually be putting all of this spent stuff in my council compost collection, because that will get composted at a really high temperature and should kill off those spores. So as I mentioned, temperate zone carnivorous plants need winter dormancy. Don't be tempted to try and bring your plants in over winter. To try and keep them growing year round, you will actually weaken your plants and they will eventually die. Many of these plants are actually native to North America, so genetically they're completely used to cold winters. Right, that one's pretty tidy for now. I'm quite pleased with that. And that's the pile of stuff that I've just taken off it. This little sweetie is Sarracenia purpurea vernosa. Really cute. I've got a feeling I want to pop that up next year. Give it a bit of space to bulk up, but there are some definitely faded pictures that need to come off. But I can't tell you how nice it is to have proper labelling on garden centre carnivorous plants. It makes such a difference to be able to know what you're actually growing. Now oddly enough, these pictures all look very clean, so that says to me this little one hasn't actually managed to feed very much this year, and could explain why it stayed quite demure. Oh, ooh. Wow. Okay. Wow, that one actually caught a shield bug. That's quite impressive. Okay, good for you. And again, for now, I'm not going to do any more than that. These little bobbly flower heads that you're seeing are actually from the moss. This little pot is full of sundew spatulata, or Drosera spatulata, and these flower heads are from the plant. What I'm actually going to do is try and snip those off, but do it in a way that they tip back into this pot. Spatulata is a very free seeding little plant and it does get into everything, as you will see very soon. If the conditions are right, obviously. Right, I'm just going to gather all of these seed heads up into my hand and chop them off and just kind of I've never had much success with actually trying to cultivate from seed myself, but I know that I get fresh plants coming from seedlings each year, so I think rather than trying to grow the plant, gather the seed, store it in a paper envelope or whatever, I'm actually just going to sow fresh straight away now any seeds that I find. I'm not going to do too much else to spatulata, as you can see. I mean, each seed, each little tiny plant is minute, absolutely minute. I can see I've got one here which is dead, so I am going to take that out, but I think the rest of it I'm just going to leave as a little colony. I don't know what this one is. For some daft reason I haven't labelled it, and it doesn't appear that it ever had a label. Maybe it was one of my rescues from the garden centre and I just potted it up a bit. I genuinely don't know. But as with all the others, these brown ones have got to go. If we look down into here, you can see there's lots of little tiny pictures trying to come up from here, so I'm trying to avoid those as much as possible. I actually feel like in the spring I want to repot this one anyway. It feels very sunken into the pot. I may have just done a quick rescue job on it and transferred it into a slightly better pot. I literally don't know. I wonder if this came from like B&Q or somewhere. Sometimes they have some really interesting ones. It's now started raining. That's nice, and it's gone very dark. Sorry about that. This is one of my Sarracenia Farnamii plants that I actually repotted last year, and it looks pretty happy. I popped it into one of the smaller terracotta pots. I specifically picked an indoor job today because I knew that this rain was coming. I'm glad to be in the greenhouse, but I'm sorry it's so noisy. I love the markings on the Farnamii pictures. They're absolutely gorgeous. And I've been particularly pleased with these plants this year. Now here is a plant that has got itself ready for winter. This is Drosera filiformis, and it has formed these beautiful resting buds. It is in its winter dormancy. All I've had to do is come along and prune off the long growth. I can even go a little bit further, take a little bit more of that off. This one's ready. If you watched my last video, my first last video about carnivorous plants, you would have heard me talking about swapping over from a peat-based carnivorous plant compost to a non-peat based. Mine comes from eCoco. I am not sponsored by them. They have not provided me with any product. I've just chosen it myself, and wow, I'm glad I did. I've been so pleased with the way that the plants have responded to the compost, and also how the compost has responded to the changes in temperature and water availability. It's just handled this hot summer really well. Here is my Venus flytrap, or Dionia. I think maybe in the spring I need to look at splitting this clump. Not quite sure. We've definitely got a lot of situations like this one where one trap is being kind of swallowed by another trap. But this particular one is actually dead. So, ooh, yeah. Who did you catch? Looks like possibly a dead hoverfly. These things will catch beneficial insects as well, but you can't do anything about that. So with the Venus flytrap, we're just going through and we're plucking off the dead traps. You can see there's still some really lovely red feeding traps on here. I'm not going to take any more than that off. I've taken off all the really brown dead ones. This is fine. This is Drosera binata dichotoma giant, and it puts on these huge, oh, you can't even see, they're so big, these huge forked sundew leaves. They've been amazing, but just like my other sundew from before, this has gone into a bit of a dormancy. It was actually the first plant to go dormant, but it still had quite a bit of prey on the browning leaves, so I did leave them. It's because they were still feeding the plant. But I am now going to come back in and just clean up properly. This one got repotted in the spring. So here I've got Drosera capensis alba. You can see it's really fading quickly for the winter, lots of brown, lots of mankiness. So I think I'm pretty much just going to go in and shear this off. It is ready to go into dormancy. Yeah, I'm just going to watch out for the crowns. Sticky. Okay, that's most of that off. I can give that a secondary clean up in the spring. This is Drosera hybrida. Really dainty. And it is also getting itself well and truly ready for dormancy, so I'm going to just tidy up. I made this little pot of spatulata a couple of weeks ago because I had so many spatulata just everywhere, so they are very prolific. So I just gathered them all up out of all the other pots and popped them into here. And you can see we've got some seed heads happening. This pot is a kind of little community that I discovered. They were all in with this Farnamii in a much smaller pot. I've got spatulata, I've got a really sweet little sundew. It could be a standard capensis, it could be the hybrida, like a little filiformis. It's very delicate, I don't know, I think these are their first year, so it's hard to say. So I've made this sort of little community bog garden thing. Really sweet, I love it. But we are ready now to just prune this back. Again, I only did this a couple of weeks ago, but it's settled in really quickly. I'm reluctant to do too much work on this pot because I have only just transplanted everything. I think that'll do it for now. And this one I have my standard Drosera capensis, been a really lovely plant this year. I love sundews and these are so hardy and so tough. So you can see I've made sure to clip these well and truly above the growing point. I don't want to accidentally damage that growing point. So these should now just sort of die back into resting buds. This is my original pot of Drosera spatulata. Obviously it's called spatulata because the leaves make these little spatulas or paddles. This beautiful beast is Sarracenia leucophylla and it's been gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous this year. It was a new one for me and it's been smashing. I mean, just look at the size of those pictures. Yeah, that one's been catching blue bottles by the million. Fantastic. Right the way down there. And this plant is actually giving us a really good idea of what you should expect to see from a Sarracenia in the winter. You've got these really strange unopened pictures. You think there's something wrong, you think it's deformed. It's not. It just doesn't need to catch insects over winter. It knows there won't really be any insects over winter and it needs its dormancy, and it just creates these strappy leaves with the merest hint of a cap on the picture. And then finally we have my gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous Sarracenia rubra. It might be a slightly more exciting variety than just rubra, but as I said before, all it says on the label is Sarracenia, so it's been guesswork. If you think you might know what it is, do let me know. And I love this flame red colour it gets, it's absolutely stunning. But, as with the others, it needs pruning. I think that's all the winter prep I can do on my carnivorous plants right now. I think as it gets colder we will start to see more leaves dying back, and I can come back in and prune those. They're so easy to look after that I don't mind, and I actually find it quite therapeutic looking at something in such detail, just really taking my time over them and making them look as beautiful as they can. Right, that's it for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to rate, share and subscribe to me here on YouTube. And until next time, bye!